Hey guys, welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. I'm Janelle and today I'm going to show you how to do this random overshot technique to create some really fun organic texture in your next piece. So let's get started. This video is brought to you by the Spruce and Linen shop where you can find weaving looms, kits, tools, and supplies. Link in the description box below. Alright you guys, so I wanted to show you this technique first in some very contrasting yarns so you can really see how it's going to work. And the amount of warp strings doesn't really matter. I'm just showing you how this stitch works. And this is one of those ones that is really random, so you kind of have to let go of it trying to be perfect, but I think it adds some interesting texture. So I have two tapestry needles here, and that's just what I like to have when I'm using two colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the off-white for my tabby stitch, and then I'm going to do the pattern stitches in black. We're also going to use a couple different blues to do this technique after, so stick around for that so that we can see what it would look like if we're trying to make almost like a water effect. I think that would look really neat. All right, so basically all you're going to do, I'm just gonna push this down a little bit more, is you're just gonna go in and you're not gonna think about it too much. I'm just going over, under, however it wants to lay. And I know these kind of more random techniques can almost be more challenging because your brain is like, but it would be a lot easier if I just had instructions to follow. But we kind of want it to end up really random so that it doesn't look uniform. Like that's the whole effect of this, is for it to not be uniform. Now, one thing that I do like to do in this kind of effect is if I went over a bunch of strings here, you can kind of see all the areas I went over. Now for the next row, I'm actually going to try to go in between those so that it is a little bit staggered. So it's not exact, but it is staggered. So we're not just stacking them up and then there's just going to be this big line of loops in the same spot. So I went over that string, I'm gonna go under. So I'm gonna go over a few. I'm gonna try to like kind of just go in between, like I said. It's okay if you go over some of the same strings, but like I said, I do try to go in between the previous row. And now that I look at this, I did it pretty evenly, but. So now you have that row in, and you can go back in with your other color and just do tabby. So again, we're just doing the same thing where we're just kind of randomly going for it. And then back in with the tabby. And you're just going to keep repeating that all the way through. I'm going to do a few more rows so you can really see this effect, and then we're going to switch colors to see if we can kind of get a bit of a water effect with two different shades of blue. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm undoing this row because on the very first string, I forgot to go over. I forgot that I needed to go over the first string because I was under the previous row. So once I get further in, now I'm almost wanting to be a little bit more strategic so that you can see, or rather you can see that I was almost being too, even here is almost being too perfect and we almost have a bit of a twill thing going on. And I guess the beauty of a technique like this is that it's going to be different every time you do it. And this is just something that I kind of just made up. It's not, like I said, like there's no pattern for it. It's not an even stitch. I just thought it might be interesting to try to create sort of organic looking texture, especially if you're someone who likes a much simpler weaving or a more plain even, because if you did colors that were similar to each other doing the same technique, it would give it a very soft texture and almost like you were using a variegated or heathered yarn, which you could probably achieve a similar effect using that. So now I'm skipping over tons of strings just to try to give it a bit of a different feel. So you can see how it literally is just to provide some texture without a perfectly even pattern. Like I said, you can really see that I almost staggered my rows too perfectly, but honestly, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It is supposed to be random. So once I started to notice that, I started to intentionally try to go a little bit more random again, so it didn't read too much like, is this supposed to be a pattern and you just messed it up, or is it supposed to be random? All right, so I just did a quick little twining stitch here before we get started with this color. And so this time I'm going to be using, again, the lighter color, so I'm using the blue for my tabby, and I will be using the darker blue for the random pattern texture technique. So again, as we did with the other color, I'm literally just going to try not to overthink it and just put my needle in there and go as random as happens. The way that I see this technique is it's kind of when you're doing other forms of random art. So maybe you're doing like drip art or splatter and you're just kind of letting the paint go where it may. This is kind of the same thing. We are going in with that tabby stitch between each row, just simply so that we have the structure that we need to not compromise the integrity of the weaving, but still giving it that fun, random, organic texture. The other thing that's obviously kind of fun about a technique like this is that you're not following a pattern, so that you could kind of do this while you're watching a movie or anything else, because it doesn't need your kind of full brain power and you don't have to count and all that stuff. So if you're someone who likes those kinds of more feeling it out style weavings, this technique is going to be perfect for you. So I guess we can kind of think of this as a random overshot, because that's what we're doing. We're going in with these long stretches of one color, and then we're going between each one with our tabby to give it that structure, underneath. Now, the more strings that you skip over, the more dramatic the pattern, and the less strings you skip over, the more kind of subdued and almost a little bit more even the pattern looks. But again, I'm just trying to keep this as random as I can. So it's really, I mean, up to you what you want to do with it, but you can, you know, be very intentional about the randomness, or you could, you know, do some rows where you are skipping over a ton of strings, and then other rows where you're only skipping over a few. You do you guys. This is like such a good experimenting stitch so that you can just kind of see what kind of texture you can create. All right, you guys, so this doesn't quite look as much like water as I thought it might, but I still think it's a really fun texture. And I mean, it's just a fun one to try because, again, you don't have to count, you don't have to think too much. It's kind of a more fluid, random, organic style of weaving, and I do think it can create some really interesting pattern. It kind of makes me think, again, like variegated yarn. What would that look like when you actually knit it up? It would be kind of knitted it up. It would look kind of random and not be super uniform. And I know a lot of you do like abstract style weavings, and so this is one way to kind of achieve that, but maybe a little bit more on the minimalist side as well. But anyway, I can't wait to see you guys try this one out. You could also make it look even different by using different thicknesses of yarn. You could use 3 colors and just keep going back in with that plain weave between each one. There's so many different things you can do. I always want to encourage you guys to just play around. It is I know it can be challenging when you have a limited time to weave to want to sit down and just like do something random and then maybe undo it all, but it really is a fun practice, and you can come up with some of your own techniques, or you know, maybe discover that you like certain ways of weaving more than others. All right, you guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this random overshot tutorial. I can't wait to see you guys use it as well. So make sure you use hashtag SL Weaving Club on Instagram. You can also tag me at Spruce and Linen on Instagram so I can see and share your work. And if you ever have any questions about the tutorials, please stick them down below in the comment section and I will be happy to answer you there. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. It's been over a week since I filmed last, and it feels shockingly good to be doing it again. Sometimes you have to like take a break from something to realize how much you love it. Okay. Done. Done. That's a wrap. Y'all.